Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Any regular listener of this show probably knows that I care deeply about mentorship. So when Super Psyched guest and success expert Dr. Ruth Gauthier told me she was co-authoring a book on mentorship with Andy Lopata, I jumped at the chance to interview him. The two of them have written The Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, a complete guide to effective mentoring. As you'll hear, Andy is wise, fun, and will provide actionable tips both on providing and receiving mentorship. And you'll hear why I love mentorship so much, and it will refer back to a solo episode of mine extolling the virtues of mentorship. My mentors, Alan Greenberger and Martin Doerner, have informed nearly everything I've done in my academic and professional, as well as personal lives. So listen in as Andy and I geek out to the importance and the how-tos of mentorship. Andy Lopata, a hearty welcome to Super Psyched.
Adam, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this.
I have been too, and you are speaking and writing about possibly one of my favorite topics of all time, and that would be mentorship. How did you fall into this?
Well, I don't know if fall is the word. In terms of mentorship itself, it's a very slow fall, very graceful one, I hope. I've been speaking and writing on the topic of professional relationships for 25 years now. And over the years, mentors have played a big role in my own journey. Mentorship is also something that I talked about because when you talk about networking and professional relationships, I'm not talking about going into a room full of strangers and exchanging business cards and elevator pitches. That's not the point of it. And it's why I talk more about professional relationships now rather than use the word networking. It's about surrounding yourselves with people that can make you stronger and bigger and more successful, and you in turn can help them. So it's not just how do I get more business through other people? It's how do I get the advice I need, the support I need, the guidance, the insights, the backup that I want. And mentorship is a core part of that. So it's always been there on the journey. My last book before this one was all about the power of being vulnerable. So it was called Just Ask Why Seeking Support is Your Biggest Strength. And I knew when I wrote that if I was to write another book, this one is my sixth, if I was to write another book, the natural progression would be, okay, let's take that vulnerability and formalize it. What happens in mentoring relationships? Because one of the things that I've seen when working with clients over the years is that much like networking, funnily enough, mentoring isn't taken seriously. Lip service is paid to it, but it's not formalized enough. It's not thought about. Even when people do have a mentor, they don't think about what they're going to talk about. They don't let themselves be held accountable. They don't measure when they're successful. So in a lot of the work I do, there's a frustration that we know the value of this, but we don't act on it. So I don't think I fell into it. I think I sort of tumbled slowly and rolled into it over many years.
Beautifully said. And I know that you co-wrote this with a former guest on my podcast who wrote about success and the formulas that seem to accompany it, the mindsets. How great that you wrote it with Ruth. I was wondering if you could also just share a little bit more about what mentorship is and what it is not.
Sure. Well, first of all, just for anyone who's not aware, you're referring to Dr. Ruth Gauthier, who also wrote The Success Factor. And it was an absolute pleasure to write the book with her. It's the first book I've co-authored since 2006. So it's been a little while. And it was the easiest one to co-author. She was a delight to work with. What mentoring is and what it isn't purely having a formal mentor. It is not just. I think it's easy to say what it's not just rather than what it's not. It's not just having a formal mentor. It's not just the inexperienced sitting at the feet of the wise and experienced. It's not just career focused. Mentorship is a range of different things, but ultimately what it is it's getting the support and the help that you need. learning from the experience and the expertise and the miles traveled by other people and getting the benefit of that for yourself so that you don't have to make the mistakes that they did, so that you've got a different perspective on the challenges that face you, so that you've got someone holding your hand and guiding you around the obstacles in your way. And the reason that I say it's not always formal is that, yes, I'm a big fan of having a formal mentor. I think the advantage of formal mentorship is having someone who will keep you focused on that journey and will hold you accountable along the way. But Ruth and I talk about having a mentoring team, and I have a range of informal mentors, people who don't even know they're my mentors, people who've said no when I've asked them to be their mentor, them to be my mentor, but they still end up my mentor because I just ask them questions when I need their guidance. Just people you can pick the phone up to and say, I need your help. So it's not just that formality. It's not just the inexperience looking up from the feet of the experience, because reverse mentoring is a big thing. If you are a baby boomer, if you're Gen X, then there's a lot that's happened in the world since we went to school. There's a lot that's happened in the workplace since we joined it. And the people that can teach us how to navigate that are not older than us. They're younger than us. They're the digital natives that we're not. So it's about what you need to learn rather than how old you are. The other thing I would say in terms of what it's not is it's not coaching, but coaching techniques are a big part of mentoring. So for me, coaching can be by anyone who has the ability to ask the right questions and help you find the way through their questioning. And it is a brilliant skill set. Mentoring is ultimately someone who's got the answers and can share them with you. Although great mentors will help you find your own way by asking the right questions to get you to that place anyway.
You know, one of the things that tickles my brain as you're speaking is the notion of the not just component, that it is not only this. And the fact that younger people can be our mentors. I remember when I was a 22-year-old, fresh out of college, moved to Japan, and I was going to be an English teacher. The word for that, many people who don't even speak Japanese know, is sensei. Sensei, if you look at the Chinese characters, means born before. And I looked at my boss and said, my students are going to be older than I am. How dare I call myself sensei? They can't refer to me as sensei. I'm not born before. With respect to English, you were born before they were. You have been speaking English longer than they have. Therefore, in the context of English speaking, you are actually sensei. Similarly, as you're saying, a Gen X person like me, learning from my children about digital native material, my children become, in some ways, paradoxically and counterintuitively, my mentor per your definition. And I agree with it 1,000,000%. I also love this idea, and I'd never even thought about it, that a mentor may not even know that they are mentoring you. And they actually are. But let's get into it, Andy. Let's talk about some of the people who've made a mark on you in terms of serving as your mentor.
I've had a handful of formal mentors, and I'm going to put my hand up as someone who's written the book on this because it really focuses your mind. I haven't made enough of that. It is actually the informal mentors that have made the bigger impact on me. And I'll share one story in particular with you. And it is actually the person I referenced in the previous answer, because it is the person who I asked to be my mentor who said, I'm too busy, and yet he's always there for me. I will name him. It's a guy called Paul McGee, and I name him for a reason. One is to respect and acknowledge what he did, but the other is that everyone should be aware of. And you should have him on your podcast, by the way.
I'm already sold.
So Paul is known as the sumo guy. He's written a number of very successful books. The most successful book, I think it's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, I think, is called Sumo. And Sumo stands for Shut Up, Move On. It is a fantastic book. He's a brilliant author and a brilliant speaker. And he's written a lot about self-confidence, about mindset, about attitude. And when I was writing my book on vulnerability, he was one of the people whose advice I went to. And I had written this book and I was really struggling with it. And I sent the document to Paul. He was one of 5 people. And I said, look, I need your honest opinion. Where am I with this book? And Paul turned around to me and he said, you've got a brilliant book here, Andy, but this isn't it. And that was probably the most important thing anyone has ever said to me. I hadn't got it right in the first take. In fact, it took 3 or 4 efforts of rewriting it before I felt I got the book right. And it was having someone who would be that honest with me that really made the impact. You don't want a mentor who is going to just say the things you want to hear. In the book, we quote Catherine Grainger, the chair of UK sport, Olympic rowing gold medalist and really superhero of British rowing. And she said in a Sunday Times interview a few years ago, you don't want your coach to sugarcoat it for you. And the interesting thing, and I think quite the funny thing, I know Paul's wife, Helen, well as well. And Paul did not want to tell me. He didn't want to hurt me with his feedback. Helen forced him to. And she said, you have got to tell him the truth. But as a result of that feedback, I rewrote the book. And there are lots of different moments along the journey, but that's probably one of the ones that had the biggest impact, partly because of the impact of the honesty and pulling out the best of myself because I got that honesty, and partly the knowledge that he didn't want to tell me that in the first place.
This is a timeless idea. It goes all the way back to the emperor, who was the emperor's new clothes. We need people to tell us that we have a boogie hanging from our nose, a little bit of lettuce on our tooth, that our fly is unzipped, metaphorically in life, lest we go out there, publish a book. I've told people as I'm writing my own book, please rake me over the coals so that I have fewer people doing that on Amazon. And I'm positive your book was better for it. It sounds like Helen and Paul both. It's interesting too, how there's so many layers to the story here, Andy. There's Paul, of course, who said he had no time to be your mentor except for the fact that he was. And then there's the fact that he received tutelage from his own wife, counsel from his co-pilot. One of the things that we need to think about when we're marrying is marry someone really smart who's going to be a good co-pilot as you try to get through life. I can count on my wife to give me outstanding counsel every time. There's so many levels of vulnerability here. You felt vulnerable sharing this with Paul. Paul felt vulnerable sharing that with you. Helen was the one who said, Paul, tell Andy the truth. And then you were willing to say, okay, this is not it.
And I think that last point is probably the most important. You have got to be willing to accept it. There's a big step change between saying, I want the truth from you, and being ready for the truth. Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. Well, you've got to be ready to handle the truth. And that's a core part of mentoring. There's no point having a mentoring relationship with someone who's just going to pat your back and say, oh, you did a good job today, when you didn't. There's timing involved. I remember when I started out on my professional speaking journey many, many years ago, some colleagues in the Professional Speaking Association in the UK invited me to join them in putting on an event where we would all invite our clients and get a chance to showcase in front of each other and have a live gig with a big audience. And it was my biggest talk at that stage. And one of my good friends, who was another informal mentor, we supported each other. She came up to me straight afterwards and she said, that was really good, but I would change this, this, and this. At that point, I didn't need that. I wasn't ready to hear that. She burst my bubble. We need to know the timing. What I needed at that point was, Andy, you did really well. And if you want some more feedback, let me know. And let's have a call in the week. And what I will do when people ask me for feedback on presentations now is I'll say, well, tell me beforehand, but then let's arrange a call a week later so I can remember it. I know it's coming, but I don't want to tell you on the day, because on the day you're focused on your ego because you put your heart and soul into it. So the timing is key, but you have to work out what you're looking for and what you're willing to take. I've just started supervision sessions for my mentoring recently. I joined last year the Association of Business Mentors in the UK. I thought, I'm writing a book on it. I should join. I'd spoken at their conference 5 years ago. And one of the things they offer is supervision for mentoring. And I'd never thought about it before. It's crazy that I didn't have that before, a mentor for the mentor, effectively. And one of the things that she will do that I've incorporated into my mentoring sessions now is at the beginning of a mentoring session, she will ask me how hard she can be with me that day. How am I feeling? How tough can she be with me on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is go really soft and 10 is go for it. Punch me and slap me, whatever you need. And she'll also ask how supportive I need her to be. And we need to be thinking about that type of stuff as well.
You know, it's interesting when I think about psychotherapy, when it's done well, there are 2 axes at any given time. There is challenge and support. And you basically have nailed those. You've also talked about right message, wrong time. You've talked about prompts, about how to perhaps, as a mentor, solicit from the mentee or the protege, I'm not sure which term you use, but the feedback that will be most helpful at this given time, and vice versa for perhaps the one who's being mentored. And I'm also just thinking about not everyone is coachable. I remember my own mentor himself saying, Adam, here's the difference between you and me. You're incredibly coachable and I am not. And that was true. Martin was the world's greatest mentor. So was Alan. And both of them definitely showed me my ass in painful ways very early on. Alan, I walked into his office and I told him I was thinking about dropping out of college. He said, sounds like a great idea. And I said, no, I can't. I'm better than that. And he said, no, you're not. And as for Martin, I remember I gave a presentation that I was known for giving very well, according to my peers. Martin was my new boss. He knew how to present the material. I returned to my desk. There was a memo, and I thought it was going to be 20 points extolling like how beautifully I did in this presentation, except it was 20 points telling me how badly I had done. And I agreed with 19 of them. All but one did I take issue with. And that, I believe, was one of the differences in terms of my being coachable. This is not some type of virtue signaling saying I'm so great, but it is me saying I was willing to pay the price. I was willing to be the Daniel to Mr. Miyagi, who would kick my ass. And I'm so grateful that he did, because there were 19 points that I needed to improve on that presentation.
I think there's a couple of things to take from that. One of them is what makes you coachable, or I don't know if there's such a word as mentable. I like it. I'm inventing a new word, mentable. But I think that you have to be in a certain space to be able to take mentoring effectively. You have to want to grow. You have to be able to leave your ego to one side. Both the mentor and the mentee need to be able to leave their ego to one side. It works both ways. But in this case, the mentee needs to leave their ego to one side. And you have to be willing to accept criticism for what it is, an opportunity for growth rather than a criticism of you. It is a criticism of you, but that's not the intent. The intent is you learn from it and you grow from it. Just before we dialed in to start speaking, I just finished writing a blog for my Psychology Today column about the power of learning from failure. I interviewed Dr. Amy Edmondson on my podcast recently, and I've taken a few great things from Amy. And a lot of it is about being willing to embrace failure, about understanding that through failure we grow. If we blind ourselves to failure, we've got nothing to learn from. And mentoring has to have that attitude. The other thing that I would take from what you were saying is that list of 20 things, of which 19 you agreed with. You don't have to agree with what your mentor says. True. It's not about, I take on board this criticism and I'm going to change everything. My mentor, I have a specific mentor I chose because I'm launching a digital product. And actually, broader than that, I need to create a different business model that's scalable. And he is a former chairman of the British Venture Capital Association. So if anyone should know how to scale and sell a business, it's him. And when I shared my idea for the digital product with him, his advice was, you can't do anything until you've written a business plan. Now, I'm not a big fan of business plans personally. I know they have their role. I just don't have a great relationship with them. But in my head, every time I tried to write a business plan, I would get stuck because I would be making things up because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't there to say, this is the audience. I wasn't there to say, this is the price. So actually, for me, there were steps before the business plan. And I've spent a lot of time since then working on those steps. Now, for me, I have taken my mentor's advice and I've said, okay, I hear you, I weigh it up, but I'm going a different route. That is perfectly valid. It is absolutely fine. And I will defend my right to do that to the hill. When you become obstinate and go, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, that's when you got a problem in the mentoring. But you should have that relationship. And I know you said 19 out of 20 were right. You had an issue with one. The numbers don't matter. It's the attitude that counts. And that is your ability to look at what, if it's 1.5 points or 20 points, to weigh each of them up individually and say, yeah, I can agree with that, or no, I don't. And deciding from there. One of the things we stress in the book is that ultimately, it is the mentee's career. It is the mentee's business. It's the mentee's life. They're the one that fall on the sword at the end of the day. But you've got to sort your attitude out so that you can recognize what advice you do need to take.
So I still have the list that Martin so kindly procured for me of 20 bullet points. For several reasons, I keep it. Probably if it were a pie chart, the most represented portion of that pie chart would be that he cared enough to take the time. I'm blown away that Martin wrote out 20 points. And if you read the 20 points, you would see that one of them actually is factually incorrect. But the other 19, bang on. He nailed it. And who does that? That's an incredible thing. What a gift to give me that. And to say, I'm taking interest in your career. I see something within you. It's almost this recognition. You're a diamond in the rough. I'm going to polish you. And it's going to hurt like hell. So if you're willing to hang in there, because growth does hurt, but I believe it's always worth it on the other end. One other thought that I'm going to throw your way, and I know you and I are both fans of Dory Clark, she refers to failure as merely data. And I think that if we can hold it as just data, we have a better chance of winning. Looked like you were about to say something.
I'll come back to the failure as data in a second. On your first point about who does that, the beauty of it is a lot of people do it. And not enough maybe, but a lot of people do. And I think there's a very simple reason. And the reason is someone's done it for them. And it's the philosophy of pay it forward. And I think the one criteria that you're looking for when you give to someone like that is, are they going to take it seriously? So I mentor in two ways. And actually, it's one of the areas of difference between Ruth and I when we wrote the book. And I think there may be a cultural difference here between the US and the UK. And it'll be interesting to get your take on it. Don't let me forget the failure is data bit. We'll come back to that one.
From the UK?
Did you not guess?
Nothing about you even suggested that.
Not even the accent.
Not at all.
But here's the point of difference. So I have two types of mentee. I have the type who pay me to mentor, which is the bit that Ruth can't get her head around, and the type that I mentor for free. So I offer my services as an expert on professional relationships. One of the ways I deliver that service is through mentoring. So I have clients who I mentor. I will be on their back. I will chase them because they bought that service from me. There are some people I mentor out of the goodness of my heart without trying to say I'm the most wonderful person on the planet, because I'm not. But for example, I mentor at the moment a 17-year-old schoolgirl who approached me at an event at Oxford University a couple of years ago. And she just turned around and said, do you mentor people? And she's a black girl who had gone to public school. Now, in the UK, public school is private school, if that doesn't confuse the hell out of you.
That confuses the hell out of me, almost like saying liberal is conservative. And
we have state school, which is what you would call public schools, the public sector schools. Then we have private schools, which are paid for. And then we have public schools, which are posh private schools. Don't ask me, but we invented the language so we can do what the hell we want with it.
It's a bonnet, damn it. It's not a hood on your car.
That's it. So a hood you put over your head.
And pants are not trousers. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
She went to this public school, very posh school. She was the only person of color there. And she was bullied to a crazy degree. And she's back in North London, where she's from. This public school was in another county. It was a boarding school. She's back at home in a sixth form college. By wonderful fate and coincidence, I found out later she goes to the sixth form college I went to, which is just incredible. And it's just lovely. But she wanted to create an anti-bullying campaign for kids initially across North London and then further. So when she approached me and said, would you mentor me? Of course I'm going to do that. A, because you've had the gumption, the cojones, the spirit to ask the question in the first place. Secondly, because I can buy into what you're trying to achieve. But it's down to her to push it. I do nudge her occasionally if she goes quiet, but it's down to her. And what I want to see from her is commitment to the relationship and the conversation. Again, we've had major disagreements. I talk about one of them in the book, about how she goes about it. Because I respect her and I respect what she's trying to achieve. She chose to go a different way to the way I would advise. I can respect that and I can go with it. But that goes to your point about the gift. I believe in her. I believe in what she's trying to achieve. Other people would do that for me, I know, and other people have done it for me. So why wouldn't I do it for her? What I ask of her is A, she commits to our conversations, not to my advice, as we've discussed, but she commits to take it seriously. And two, that when she's in a position to, she does that for someone else. And she doesn't have to wait 40 years to do that.
That is absolutely beautiful and deeply moving. I want to ask you about commitment. How do you ascertain commitment?
Are you contacting me to arrange another call? Are you booking calls in? Are you turning up for calls? Have you thought about what we've talked about between sessions? Have you taken action on it? It was an interesting conversation with my mentoring supervisor recently, in that I think I was getting too hung up on not hearing from mentees in between sessions, because my ego wanted to know that they were thinking about me and my advice all the time and making these changes. For years, I've been getting frustrated because I work with very busy people, that I wasn't hearing from them. I was asking them for updates in between and I wasn't getting them. I was asking them, tell me a week before a call what you want to talk about, and I wasn't getting it. But when I got on the call, they were making progress. I am in the process of learning to let go of that need to hear constantly in between sessions. I have tried so many bits of technology to allow people to journal, to update, to share things. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. One of my mentees finished a program with me a few months ago, and he said, I know I haven't been brilliant in what you wanted in terms of giving you the input in between sessions. He said, but that's just not my style. But I have learned and I've applied stuff, and this has really worked for me. Mm-hmm. And that was a really important moment. And it was really important for me to hear that. That was just before the session with my supervisor. So the two things combined really helped me as a mentor. So commitment isn't what I perhaps thought it was, communication in between sessions. Commitment is making sure the sessions happen, listening during the sessions, taking them seriously, and then applying stuff in between.
Wow. So Andy, let's talk about this concept that I hear kind of floating around in the ethers around when one is pursuing mentorship. Perhaps it's not best to say right from the outset, will you be my mentor? That perhaps it's done gradually. It's a not just idea, but I'm just wondering, in terms of general rules, if someone's interested in becoming a mentee to someone, how is it brokered? What should they bear in mind? I'm guessing that there is some obligation on their part, including the word that you use frequently, which is taking it seriously on both ends. Yeah. But just going to say right from the outset, I don't think it's a proposition of, hey, I would like to be a bloodsucker. And may I suck some of your blood? It seems like it has to be synergistic. There has to be some type of two-way exchange. What are your thoughts on how does one propose mentorship, and what should the expectations on both sides be?
Ruth and I only disagreed on two things, and you've struck on them both. This was the other one, because Ruth doesn't feel that you should ever ask anyone to be your mentor. I have done, and Chloe, as I just mentioned, did ask me. You can do. You have to be ready to be let down. Dory's talked about it. Dory recorded some videos for us when she was in London about her experience of mentoring, and she finds it off-putting when people come out of the blue and say, will you be my mentor? And so I think you do have to think about that, particularly if it's someone you don't have an established relationship with. There are exceptions to every rule. I hadn't met Chloe before that conversation. Sometimes you just click and, you can ask, but it might be better to do things gradually. And just little asks, little bits of advice. It's much easier to ask someone, I would really appreciate your opinion on something. And that's an easier give for someone. I had a call this afternoon with a very senior learning and development professional in one of the biggest public sector departments in the UK government, who I met on a call 2 weeks ago, a call that I facilitated. And I said, look, I would really appreciate some feedback on something. She gave me 45 minutes. Happily, she said she loves talking about learning and development with other people who are passionate about it. But do you think if I'd gone to her and said, would you be my mentor? She would have done that. Now I know that's not someone I'm looking to be my mentor, but she could be part of my mentoring team that I talked about earlier. If I know the conversation we had earlier and the initial exchange a couple of weeks ago, I would feel comfortable saying, could I ask your advice on something? So remember, you don't have to be a formal mentor. Now, you could evolve to formal mentorship. So I think my first piece of advice would be to say, what are you looking for? If you are simply looking for someone who can share their wisdom with you at certain times, you can bounce ideas off of, do you need them to be a formal mentor? If you are looking for someone who will hold you accountable, who will take you out of your head, you know the phrase, working on the business rather than in the business. And a lot of mentoring is career focused, working on your career rather than in your career. If you want someone that can take it out of that space and you can schedule regular calls that do that, that's an argument for formal mentorship. So understand what you're looking for. Is it, can I pick your brains? Can I bounce some ideas off of you? You don't necessarily need to ask them to be your formal mentor. If you want that regular arrangement, then look at, first of all, do you have a strong enough relationship to ask them? Secondly, are you okay with them saying no? And understand that no is not about you, it's about them. When Paul said no to me, it was because he is busy. It's not because he didn't want to help me, as time has proved. So it's understanding that. And again, we may have, this is something I'm exploring, we may have this difference between different cultures. Are there paid mentors who you can pay for their services as there are paid coaches? So are there people who you can pay for that service? If you work in a large organization, if you are a member of a professional association, is there a mentoring program? Often there is, but nobody knows about it. But go to your HR department in an organization and say, can you help me find a mentor? Go to your line manager and say, can you help me find a mentor? And by the way, not you, because your line manager will say, I'll be your mentor. That creates conflicts of interest. It shouldn't be anyone in your line of management, or preferably, depending on the size of the organization, even in your line of service delivery or department, so you can eradicate as many conflicts as possible. So there are organizations that support mentoring. So I mentioned professional associations. In the book, we talk to sector-wide mentoring organizations. So I do a lot of work with the event sector. There are event sector focused mentoring organizations. So hit Google or any other search engine of your choice, probably Google. Ask colleagues, ask your professional association, where can I find a mentor? And you'll find one.
And we've been dancing around it, but we haven't addressed it directly. What are the benefits to each party for this mentorship relationship?
Well, I think we probably have answered, as you say, we haven't answered it directly, but we've given the answer several times. To the mentee, it's the benefit of the expertise, the insights, the guidance, the support. Let's not underestimate the support of having someone in your corner can give you, and different perspective as well. In going back to my last book, Just Ask, the book about vulnerability, I interviewed a former world boxing champion, Billy Schwer. A lot of it was about his journey, particularly after losing his title. But actually, I wanted to explore the analogy of the corner man or the corner team, because we see the boxer as the lone pugilist in the center of the ring. And as Billy said, when you're in the middle of the ring, there's nothing your corner can do for you. You're the one getting your lights punched out. But in between rounds, in the planning for a fight, they're there to give you insights on your opponent, to give you feedback on what you're doing wrong, feedback on what you're doing well, help you navigate, change, adapt. Having those people in your corner can make all of the difference. For the mentor, and let's forget paid mentoring for the moment, because even with paid mentoring, actually, you still have all of the other benefits. You're just getting paid for it as well. But it's the pleasure we get from helping other people and seeing them thrive and survive. One of the things that I have said for many years, and I absolutely mean it from the bottom of my heart, I love getting paid for what I love to do, but that's not my biggest reward. My biggest reward is when someone turns around and says, I love what you do, or you made this difference to my life. In our little chat before we went live on air, I mentioned my podcast and you asked the title. And when I told you, you went, that's you? And I listened to that. That's a great one. That's a brilliant feeling. That's a great feeling. I got a LinkedIn connection request from someone this week. And I said, why would you like to connect? And he said, I read your book. I'm recuperating from an operation. And it's really helped me because I'm thinking through my next steps. It's that. I worked with a team of directors at a large accountancy firm. I worked with 6 of them. And this wasn't the purpose of the program. It was a side benefit. 4 of the 6 made partner. And all of them attributed some, not all, but some of their success to the work we did, to the point that one of them talked about it in their partner interview. It's that. For me, the reward for the mentor is the feedback. It's people taking your advice on board. It's seeing people think about it. It's seeing people change direction, try something new and succeed in doing so. If you're mentoring someone for their career, it's seeing them hit the next level and say thank you. If you're mentoring someone in their business, it's seeing their success. We interview the chairman of the Association of Business Mentors in the book. And he talks about a business that he helped to turn around completely from almost going bust to now where they got 2 or 3 different outlets. It's a printer shop and the joy that gives him. So I think one of the biggest joys we get in life is seeing others succeed because of the help we've given them. It's that.
I think Erik Erikson, the great developmental psychologist, really got it right, that and it can happen at various stages of life, this notion of generativity where we want to give back, where we want to touch and nurture life. We want to know that we've made a difference. We don't want to squander the wealth. We want to share it. And this has been hard earned, and maybe you can carry it forward and do something with it, and that it lives on in you. It's almost like touching a forest and knowing that the trees will grow better because you've touched that forest. And I see that you live by that because you are surrounded by both books, and to the listener who cannot see, Andy, you've got thank you notes all around you. And so that is clearly one of the things that floats your boat, is this kind of Benjamin Franklin-esque Franklin effect of knowing that you've done something and that you've taken great interest in their success as a result. Can you tell me a bit about the thank you notes that surround you? And there's a story there.
Yeah, and we do talk about generativity in the book. And by the way, I think the one word that was missing from what you just said that you alluded to was legacy. And particularly when you're mentoring in what we call the traditional hierarchical model, where it is older person mentoring younger, there is that element of legacy there as well. But in terms of the thank you cards, some of these thank you cards go back well over a decade. And you can't even read them anymore. The ink's faded. But I never throw away a thank you card. And I got one today from a guest on my podcast. That will go up somewhere. I've run out of space, but I will find a slot and it will keep falling off my bookshelves, but it'll keep going back up. Appreciation for me, as I've just said in my previous answer, it's the biggest reward I think we can get. And so when people acknowledge that, acknowledge what you've done, I think that we should treasure that. And that's why those thank you cards are surrounding me. That's 25 years of work in this space represented there. That's people that I trained back in the early 2000s are up there. It's people who have won new business because of the work they've done with me. It's people whose career has moved on. It's people who listened to a presentation and were moved by it. It's people who booked me for a presentation and got what they were looking for. It's people I've given referrals to that have worked out. And I think it's the most important thing that I could surround myself with. It's, in a way, I don't use it for this, but I guess subconsciously it reminds me of the value I bring in the moments where maybe you doubt yourself. That's not why they're there. They're there because people have shown their appreciation for me, and I value that probably above anything else.
Absolutely gorgeous. Well, Andy, I'm so loving our conversation, and I'm wondering if there's anything I should have asked but have not yet asked.
After 25 years in this space, how long have you got? But if we focus in on mentoring, the book is in 3 areas. One is our primary focus is on people who are senior executives and want to be a better mentor. We also talk about how to find a mentor for yourself and be a good mentee. And then we talk about why mentoring isn't working within organizations. And I've alluded to that a little bit in the conversation. Sure. I wonder if there was one question that you haven't asked that I feel very strongly about. It's when should you be a mentor and when should you be a mentee?
All right. So Andy, when should you be a mentor and when should you be a mentee?
All the time for both. And the reason I say that is there isn't a stage of your career where you move from one into the other. And sadly, some people think there is. It's amazing the amount of talks I give on this topic where I will ask people to put their hand up if they are a mentor and then put their hand up if they have a mentor, and all those hands go down. If you recognize the value you can bring to someone else, and I'm going to be rude here if I can, please. Don't be so arrogant to think that you can't benefit from someone else's support as well. A bit of a cliched analogy for it, but it's cliched. I think a lot of cliches are there because they work and they're true, is the top sports stars still have coaches.
For sure.
The top stars in any sport, Djokovic, I bet you any money Djokovic is better at tennis than his coach, but he still has a coach. And if Djokovic can, if the top star in any sport can have a coach, then you can benefit from a mentor or a coach.
Andy, that's such an interesting point. I would venture a guess that it's actually the arrogance that serves as their kryptonite, that it's the arrogance that keeps them from becoming a Djokovic. They may become very, very, very good, but they are missing out on becoming truly world class. I believe that if you want to be excellent, I'm 100% in agreement. Arnold Schwarzenegger said so himself. He didn't get there alone. The idea of this rugged individual, they die alone in the cowboy movie. Pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps? Yeah, okay. Then go for a nice walk in the mud, but you're not going to get very far. Get a coach, get a mentor. I'm 100% on board.
Arrogance is an interesting topic. I think it make an interesting topic for discussion because arrogance can be a superpower as well as kryptonite. And in fact, kryptonite is the source of superpowers for Superman, isn't it? So it sort of works as a metaphor. It's getting arrogance and humility in the wrong proportions. You can be too humble and not arrogant enough, and therefore not put yourself forward for opportunities, not claim your victories, not claim credit. So you do need arrogance and you do need to dampen down humility at times. Then you get to the point where the arrogance can be too much. And people have got that you're good at this. People who understand that you deserve credit, they'll have a bit of humility as well and say, okay, but I'm not the finished product.
Such an interesting topic. And I can't help but geek out. In my profession, we talk about healthy narcissism, and it can be almost conceptualized with a balloon. There's the overblown balloon, which is the classic kind of bloviating, annoying, disgusting, narcissistic individual. But there's also the underblown. For someone who is a noble leader to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run for a leadership position. That requires a modicum of narcissism or arrogance, as you say, to say, I'm worthy of doing this. And it's not without benefit to everyone. I think all stakeholders benefit when someone who is healthfully narcissistic and certainly doing it for the benefit of all. That would be a great topic at some point. Andy, I'm sold.
Well, just on that, I've got a metaphor for you, just come off the top of my head. You're in a restaurant, someone is choking to death. Do you want someone who knows the Heimlich maneuver to be humble about it? Or do you want them to be arrogant?
Absolutely. That's a great one. That's a really good one. Adam Sandler actually has a joke about that, where he applies the Heimlich maneuver and totally chokes in the process of doing it. Not chokes, but makes an egregious error. Definitely worthy if Sandler hits you funny. And it's been such a delight to geek out with you. And I'm ready to tee up one on arrogance at some point in the future. But for now, my magical question. If you had the abilities to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the lives of individuals and perhaps society at large by extension, what would that insight or skill be? And how do you imagine it would affect the individual as well as perhaps society at large?
That's a brilliant question that I had no prior warning of. But luckily, it didn't take me long. And it actually goes back to something I promised to come back to and didn't, which was the data that we talked about. What was Dory's quote about data that you meant?
Failure
gives you data. Failure is merely data. I had a wonderful guest on my podcast called Daniela Lander. Daniela was a former global talent lead. Forget her exact title, but a former global talent lead for Google. And her quote, which I have quoted so many times, it's in the book, it's been re-quoted on my podcast many times, so I love it, is do not seek to be the smartest person in the room, be the one who seeks to learn the most. And I was going to mention that in terms of failure is data. That was the whole point of the blog that I was writing today about learning from failure. That superpower that you talk about would be curiosity. Every conversation we go into, we live in a bipolar world at the moment. In fact, my podcast, the week we're recording this, my guest brought up one of my biggest bugbears, which is out in the UK at the moment, in the US at the moment, in France, I see it, in Australia, I've seen it in so many countries around the world. We live in a binary world. You're right or you're wrong. It's black or it's white. And that's not the world we need to be in. We lack curiosity. When someone makes a statement, we jump in immediately to either say you are so right or you are so wrong. We don't ask, why do you think that? Why do you feel that? So we would all benefit because we would live in a more tolerant, understanding society based around solutions rather than being proven right all the time. And every individual would benefit because they would grow from what they would learn from the conversations that they would have.
Andy, I could not agree more. Get curious, not furious. Be recognize
Get curious, not furious. I like that.
the nuances, the nuanced conversation, the patience that requires. There's so many virtues in what you just said. It could be an episode unto itself, a book unto itself. But I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with my listeners. This has been a blast, and you have to promise me you will look me up if you're in the Bay Area.
Oh, definitely. I'm adding you to my growing network of people I need to catch up with in California. Adam, it's been a real pleasure. Real pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, Andy, the best. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.